Welcome to today's conversation exploring the digital well-being model. I would like to give us an overview before we get into the conversation fully. We now live in a world where there's hardly anything that we want to do that doesn't require one form of technology or the other. And so it's important that we begin to build structures. We begin to build structures that ground our identity. As the world is increasingly becoming intertwined with technology, we must ensure that our identity shapes the digital interactions that we engage with and not the other way around. The digital world should be an extension of who we are, and it should show in how we react and respond to the circumstances and situations that we meet in the digital space and not the other way around. So what's the Living Digitally model about? The Living Digitally Well model is an 8-pillar framework designed to cultivate and enhance digital well-being in our interconnected world. It's important to realize that digital well-being overviews how we build balance between our online and offline lives. And so to be able to stay productive while protecting our health and optimal well-being, it's important that we begin to set up these structures, as I said in the overview, that help navigate this. And so the Living Digitally Well model is a pillar that designs and helps us to achieve this. So even though there are 8 pillars, I will be taking them one after the other. So we won't be running the 8 pillars today. We'll just be discussing one of the pillars. And today's pillar is called Digital Foundation. And it has 3 key areas of focus. It has the self-awareness, it has the sense of others, and it also has the conscious decision-making process. These 3 ideas form what we call the digital foundation. So let's understand the concept of the digital foundation before we go into these 3 areas that define what we call the digital foundation. And I'll be using a simple principle that is called the reference point principle to explain what the digital foundation is. Everything in life has a beginning. I mean, our life has a beginning the day we came into this world. And so in the same way, our digital journey needs to have a solid foundation. This beginnings becomes the reference point in how we approach all it is that we do and all it is that we are. I want you to think about the reference point principle as the law of first mention, the idea that you get the definition of a thing by the first time that word or that thing was used. It's in the same way that the concept of the reference point principle operates. It operates based on the earliest knowledge of a particular circumstance or a particular situation that you have. And in some cases, it operates based on the last known knowledge of that situation that you have. This reference point principle sets the tone, it shapes our perspective and influences our approach to everything that we do. It shapes the kind of people we follow online. It shapes the kind of interactions that we engage with online. It shapes the kind of responses that we give online. Understanding and acknowledging this foundational aspect is key to navigating and succeeding within the rapidly evolving digital landscape. This is because it guides the way we think, it guides the way we feel, and it guides the way we behave. And all this that I've said about the reference point principles matters because oftentimes people respond to life from experiences and not their actual true self. For instance, if somebody has had a toxic early childhood experience, that can influence their adult decisions if they do not address and realign with their one true self. Think about it. What's the reference point for how you are responding to life right now? Are you responding as a result of a history of experiences that have happened to you, or are you responding from a place of knowledge of who you are? You remember that we said in the concept of digital foundation, there are 3 key areas that form it, and the first is awareness of self. And so do you respond to life based on an awareness of who you are, or do you respond to life as a result of an accumulation of different experiences that have happened to you but are not through to who you are? I want you to just ponder on that question for a little bit. To make the best of our digital time, we need to know who we are and understand others. This will enable us to make accurate and informed decisions in every area of our life, as in this case, the digital space. This is why the first pillar in our 8-pillar model is called the digital foundation, understanding your why and your how of being online. So I mentioned that there are 3 areas under the digital foundation. I want us to explore the first area, which is called self-awareness. This is a word that I'm sure all of us are very familiar with. I'm sure it's a word that a lot of us use, and so it's not new to us. So in addition to the knowledge that you already have about self-awareness, just get the context with which I want to bring today's conversation. When we talk about self-awareness, we're essentially just talking about our ability to review, our ability to explore, and our ability to understand who we are. I'll take that again. Self-awareness is our ability to review, our ability to explore, and our ability to understand who we are in an endless pool of ever-evolving digital landscape. What you know about the digital world yesterday is not what it is today. There are new informations, thousands of informations that have been put outside between yesterday and today. There are millions of podcasts that have been released. There are millions of books that have been released. And so the concept of self-awareness in this ever-evolving digital landscape is our ability to review, our ability to explore, and our ability to understand ourselves and still be grounded in this endless sea of information. This includes understanding how we interact with technology and the impact of those interactions on our thoughts, on our emotions, and on our behaviors. You remember in the reference point principle, we spoke about the idea of how those experiences shape how we think, how we feel, and how we behave. We are seeing it come to life again in the context of self-awareness, how we interact online, the consequences of how we interact online has an influence on how we think, how we feel, and how we behave. This is what we see in the context of thoughts, in the context of emotions, and in the context of behavior. We do this by monitoring, observing, and evaluating our essence. So the way we review, explore, and understand who we are in this endless sea of constantly evolving information is by observing, monitoring, and evaluating our essence. And our essence is just our identity. It overviews our purpose, it overviews our vision, it overviews our values, it overviews our beliefs, it overviews our expressions, online and offline. I will talk in one of the other pillars that we'll be discussing in the subsequent months about our essence. So the purpose, vision, value, beliefs, and expressions. I will explain that in deeper terms when we come to that particular class. But for this context, just understand that the totality of how we view our self-awareness, the totality of how we understand ourselves to be happens when we take a moment, when we take a pause to monitor, observe, and evaluate what we know ourselves to be. So it's not enough to know what triggers you. You have to be able to understand what are the sources of this trigger. Why am I triggered by them? It's not enough to know it. You have to be able to monitor it. You have to be able to evaluate it. You have to be able to observe it. That is why you will notice in our definition of self-awareness, we said it's our ability to review, it's our ability to explore, and it's our ability to understand. So it's not just enough to review. Do you understand what you are realizing about yourself? Do you need to ask certain questions? Do you need to do certain research so that you can come to the true knowledge of who you are and what it is that you've been called to do? Knowing who we are is one of the most important things that we can do for ourselves. This is because it is the totality, everything that we have ever been, everything that we currently are, and everything that we will be, including our strengths and our shortcomings. It is what differentiates us from anyone else in the world. You will hear people say that identical twins, their fingerprints are not the same. Our identity is what differentiates us from everybody else. True satisfaction comes when we realize, understand, and accept who we are. So the essence of the conversation is, again, not just doing it for doing sake. You are not monitoring, you are not observing, you are not evaluating yourself so that because you don't like the nature of it, you will not focus on it, or because you don't like the nature of it, you won't explore it further. Remember, I said in certain instances, you might have to do research. In certain instances, you might have to ask questions to be able to come to the true knowledge of who you are. So we're saying here that true satisfaction comes when, after all this review, after all this exploring, after all this observation, once we've come to the clarity of who we are, true satisfaction comes when we realize these things, understand them, and then accept them, knowing that, oh, this person has 7 gifts, I have 3 gifts. This person is able to actively function in music, while me, I'm not able to actively function in music, but I can function in speaking. True satisfaction comes when you accept that my gifting is public speaking, not when you realize that your true essence is public speaking, but you are envious of the person that is singing and you want to focus your perspective on singing. Even if you go to singing schools, music academies essentially, and you learn how to sing, you might be excellent in it, but true satisfaction doesn't come in it because that is not what you've been called to do. Your identity has a description. And so true satisfaction comes from understanding that description, accepting that description, and then living out that description. This happens offline and online. A context for online is you have a message to share, and then it's not a very popular message, and people are not responding in the way that you expect them to respond. If you're not grounded in who you are, if you've not accepted who you are, you will change your message to meet up with the standards of society. Now, you can redesign the approach to which you present your message to the right audience. The way you post on LinkedIn, for instance, it's not the way you post on Twitter. It's not the way you post on Instagram. So we are not saying that you don't study the market that you are in and provide the best value according to the template of that market. You do that to get the best results. What we are saying is that if you are not grounded in who you are, instead of changing your templates to meet up with the standards of how people can best perceive it, it's the same idea with how the way you will tell a story to a 5-year-old. It's not how you will tell that story to a 50-year-old. Storyline has to be different to adapt to the people that you are speaking to, but the message doesn't change. You see the point? The point is that if you are grounded in who you are, if you know who you are, and you've accepted who you are, then your message doesn't change, even though the methodologies might change. And so it's saying that true satisfaction comes when we realize, when we understand, and when we accept who we are, which then helps us interpret life from the appropriate lens. Self-awareness is the lens through which we see ourselves in this world that we live in. Self-awareness is the lens in which we see ourselves in an ever-evolving digital landscape. Self-awareness is the template that helps us remain who we are, even though the world rapidly keeps changing. This self-reflection helps us attain our best and helps us fulfill our potentials in a way that helps us become all it is that we've been called to be. If we don't have self-awareness, then everything that we do in the digital space or everything that we do, even offline, will hinder us from becoming all it is that we've been called to be. Because like I said in the example, we'll be living out the life of somebody else because it seems like the grass is greener at the other side. But that's not the truth. We know that the grass is greener where the grass is watered. All you need to do is, what are the templates for me to water my grass? All that I've said so far is important because it helps you to engage better with your thoughts, with your feelings, and with your behaviors. Self-awareness is a continuous process. We keep discovering things about ourselves, either by things from an external perspective or from an internal perception. The digital space will expose us to a lot of information. And so it is important that we are grounded in who we are. So we are not defining ourselves from what society accepts, but rather we are defining ourselves from who we know ourselves to be. Remember, the way we know ourselves to be is through review, is through exploring, is through monitoring, is through evaluation, is through observing all the templates that I mentioned earlier on. So the first step in the digital foundation, the first idea in the concept of digital foundation as one of the pillars to living digitally well is self-awareness. Once you've been grounded in who you are, once you've had an understanding of who you are and you've accepted that, the next step is to have an understanding of who others are, which is what we call the sense of others. So the second point in our living digitally well pillar based on the digital foundation is sense of others. Look at it this way. The World Health Organization says that without mental health, there can be health. And the basic definition of mental health is how we think, how we feel, and how we behave. It's important to realize that in the way that we live in society, everything that happens in our life has a way of impacting how we think, how we feel, and how we behave. But also the way that we behave offline and online, it also can influence the way other people think, the way other people feel, the way other people behave. So it's not enough to say, I know who I am, and so life is just all about me. If life was all about you, you'd be the only one in the world. but we can't live in isolations. And so we live as a collective body. We live as a social connected society. And so it's important to realize that even though you are grounded in yourself, the way that you behave in the digital space can impact people either positively or negatively. That is why you have to have a base understanding of others in addition to having an awareness of yourself. So when we talk about a sense of others, what are we talking about? It's important to realize that we do not live alone in this world. The digital space, even more so, because the digital space is an amplifier of our offline life, of the physical space. And so we have a greater access to people within the digital space. And so while it is important to be self-aware, it is equally important to be aware of others around us, as their actions can impact how we think, feel, and behave in the same way that our actions can impact how they think, feel, and behave. Sense of others refers to acknowledging the independent existence of others. Please get this definition. Sense of others refers to acknowledging the independent existence of other people and realizing the impact of our actions, the impact our actions can have on them and them on us. I'd like to take that definition again. Sense of others refers to acknowledging the independent existence of other people and realizing the impact our actions can have on them and their impact on us. How does who we are affect how they think, how they feel, and how they respond to life? And how does how they think, how they feel, and how they act impact us in the digital space or in our offline lives? This is important because it gives room for empathy. If you are not just thinking about yourself, if you are putting other people into consideration, it gives room for empathy. It gives room for emotional intelligence. It gives room for respect. And it gives room for an understanding of the diverse ways that people engage with life and technology. So you might see a post on social media, for instance, and you're not triggered by it. And somebody else might see that post and is triggered by it. Having a sense of others helps you not be judgmental towards that person. You do not have to agree with them because, again, remember that the foundation is that you have to be aware of who you are. And so based on the tenets of who you are, there are certain values that you adhere to. So based on that, it means that it's not every value that will be valuable to you. Now, just because something isn't valuable to you doesn't mean that it is not valuable to somebody else. And so if you do not have that space for empathy, if you do not have that space for emotional intelligence, if you do not have that space for respect, if you do not have that space for understanding that we are all different, our opinions are all different, and they are not law, then you will take your perspective as a law and lord it over every other person. You see what we're saying? And in your doing that, it can negatively impact their overall wellness. It can negatively impact how they think, how they feel, and how they behave. In the same way that if people do this to us, it can negatively impact how we think, it can negatively impact how we feel, it can negatively impact how we behave or respond to life. I don't know if this has happened to you before. You went online and you came back and you were feeling drained because the information that you consumed did more harm than good to you. We're in a generation where clickbait is the in thing. And so people just want traction to their feed because content is monetized right now and people want to make money. And so people don't really care about the intent or the consequences of their actions within the digital space as long as it's bringing them money. You see how because they are not thinking about other people, they can negatively impact other people. Now, we're not talking about pettiness. We're not talking about people not having resilience. We're talking about you doing things that are right, even if people are saying it's wrong. We're talking about you not doing what is wrong, even if many people are saying it's right. Because you're not just considering yourself, you're also considering other people. And in considering other people, you are not letting go of who you are. Because what happens a lot of times is that if you try to please other people, you lose a sense of your identity. The conversation of having a sense of others is not at the expense of who you are. That is why the order of progression is self-awareness. Be grounded in who you are. Accept who you are, then gain awareness of other people. So both of them are not in competition with each other. You are not saying I'm not posting this because it will make the other person feel bad if it is the truth of what you're supposed to post, as long as you're not being judgmental. It's okay to criticize people as long as it's constructive. The intention matters. So if you are criticizing somebody and you're not criticizing the person in a way that is constructive, you're not criticizing the person in a way that the person can review what you've said and do better, are you really having the best of that person at your mind? Because we're in a generation where people like to catch cruise. And so you just join the web of people that are sharing information that is negatively impacting the person that you are reaching out to, and it is not providing a solution to that person. Sense of others refers to acknowledging the independent existence of other people and realizing the impact that our actions can have on them in the same way that their actions can have on us. A sense of others ensures that we can coexist even if we don't always see eye to eye. And for this to happen, it requires skills like intuitiveness, social cues, and interpersonal relationship. In one of our pillars, remember we have 8 pillars in the Living Digitally Well model. In one of our pillars, we'll be talking about empathy, we'll be talking about emotional intelligence, we're talking about interpersonal skills. And so in those sessions, I'll take out time to explain extensively what these words individually mean. So now you have an understanding of who you are. You have a sense of other people. It takes us to the last point in our digital foundation, which is conscious decision making. Have you ever posted something online and then you were like, oh, had I known, I wouldn't have posted that? And we're in a generation where people can take screenshots. So once it's online, it's ever online. That happens a lot of times because we've not reflected on what it is that we want to post. Or you see a comment that upsets you, you see a post that triggers you online, and you just quickly respond out of character because you didn't take time to pause and reflect. A lot of times this happens because we are not consciously making the decisions that it is that we're making. We make spontaneous decisions based on the content that we see online or based on how we are feeling in the moment. There's a quote that says, and I'm paraphrasing it, don't make decisions when you're too happy or when you're too sad or when you're too upset. Because a lot of times the decisions that you're making, you're not thinking clearly, you're thinking based on the emotion that you're feeling, and that emotion fades off over time. And so now that you have gained an awareness of who you are, now that you have an understanding of who people are, you can now begin to make conscious decisions in your digital life. Our engagements in life, and especially online, cannot be random. I can't overemphasize that. Our engagements in life, and especially online, cannot be random. You have to think about every decision that you are making online. We're in a generation where your online space is your CV. You are looking for job opportunities, you are looking for project opportunities, and people are saying, let me see what you've done. Let me see what your page looks like. Your life online cannot be random. Conscious decision-making essentially overviews a state of full clarity in the decisions that we make as we are aware of them. We are aware and we understand the implications and the consequences of the choices that we're making. A lot of times people engage online in the way that they do because they are not conscious of the implication and the consequences of those choices. There's a quote that says, if we know better, we will do better. And obviously, knowledge is part-time. The more we keep growing. Remember, we spoke in the context of self-awareness that self-awareness is a continuum, it's a continuous process. We'll keep discovering ourselves. We'll keep discovering things about other people. There's a place for that. But in this knowledge that we have at this point in time, we must be able to evaluate based on the current data that is available to us, the implication and the consequences of the choices that we are making. This progression of the digital foundation model matters because we have to know who we are and have an idea of how other people exist to be able to make conscious and concise decisions online in the way that we become more deliberate with our digital interactions and the potential impact that they will have both on ourselves and on others. In this way also, we can take charge of the narratives within our control. Our online footprints are both the information that we put out there and the information about us that other people put out there. In this way also, we can take charge of the narratives within our control. We can interpret those outside of our control and then own up to the responsibilities therein. Remember, our digital footprints are the informations about us that we put out there and the ones that other people put out there, because the kinds of people that you interact with know the kind of content about you that they can write, the kinds of content about you that they can't write. People that know me know not to send me depressing videos of mass killings, because if you're sending me videos of mass killing, what am I supposed to do with that video? I will gain that knowledge. But what am I supposed to do with that information? You can tell me that, oh, this happened, there was riots in this particular location, and this happened. But you don't need to show me the videos, because showing me the video, I should be able to do something with that information. If you are telling me about it, okay, so maybe I need to be security conscious, so I'm not going to certain locations and all of that, but I don't need to see the pictures, because I know the kind of person that I am. I'm a very emotional person, and those around me know that. And so being aware of yourself, being aware of others, it helps ensure that your digital footprint, you can manage it, you can control the narrative. Obviously, you can't control what people post about you, but because of the knowing of you that they have, it guides the kind of information that they put out there. And obviously, if you see information that doesn't align with who you are and what to be, you can easily reach out to them to take it off. You can follow certain people that their values, over a period of time, their values no longer align with you, and you stop following those people. But if you're not grounded in who you are, if you're not grounded in an understanding of who other people are, then you just feel compelled to stay connected with certain informations that are negatively impacting you. You will feel compelled to not talk about informations that are discrediting who you are. And so the concept of conscious decision making involves being intentional about the content one consumes and shares, considering the consequences of these actions, not just to us, but to other people also. And so finally, when we are self-aware, we gain a deeper understanding of who we are, how we think, how we feel, and how we behave. Remember, the context of how we think, how we feel, and how we behave is the definition of mental health. And the World Health Organization will tell us that without mental health, there can't be health. As long as you have a brain, you can have a mental health condition. Certain people that are not mentally ill have poor mental health. And a lot of time, that poor mental health, whether it's sadness, whether it's being overwhelmed, a lot has to do with how we navigate the digital space. Because a lot of the things that we do, a lot of the interactions that we engage with are within the digital space. And so when you are self-aware, you gain a deeper understanding of who you are. And this helps overview how you think, how you feel, and how you behave. When you develop a sense of others, you gain clarity into their emotions, you gain clarity into their motivations, you gain clarity into their behaviors. This is not excusing bad habits. This is not saying that you will fully understand the mindset behind the things that they do, but it helps to remind you that everybody is human. People can make mistakes, for instance. So you are not judgmental towards them. Rather, you're empathetic towards them. Somebody posts that he's depressed because of the economic situation of the country right now, for instance. If you don't have anything good to say, you don't need to post. That's what empathy does. But what you see online is because people want to catch crews, they start making fun of that person. And then the person goes from worse to worse. And we must realize that everybody is in a different state of their journey. And so while certain people might be struggling with certain things and not post online, other people, as a coping mechanism, need to post online. Because that's the way they get support structure. So the awareness of others tells that just because you wouldn't do certain things doesn't mean that others won't do it. There's a quote that I wrote. I love to write quotes. It says that just because you are strong in somebody's weakness doesn't mean that you are not weak in somebody's strength. Just because you are strong in somebody's weakness doesn't mean that you are not weak in somebody's strength. And so if you look at somebody's weakness from the place of your strength, you won't be empathetic towards them. And so when you develop a sense of others, you gain clarity into their emotions, into their motivations, and into their behaviors. This knowledge can lead to a more informed and conscious decision-making process. It can lead to a more effective communication process. It can lead to stronger relationships. People who build a strong digital foundation, that is awareness of self, sense of others, and conscious decision making, as we have explored today, are often equipped to manage their emotions, navigate challenges, and work towards achieving their goals, both in their personal and in their digital lives. People who build a strong digital foundation, as we have explored, are often better equipped to manage their emotions, navigate challenges, and work towards achieving their goals, both in their personal and in their digital lives. This brings us to the close of today's conversation. So what I've done today is I've set a foundation to how to begin our journey in the digital space. You will know how when you want to start driving a car, you go to a driving school. It's the same way that when we want to start living digitally well, when we want to start navigating the digital space in a way that we are productive while avoiding the associated harm, we need to know certain templates and principles that help us navigate these spaces effectively. Today, we've spoken about the first pillar, which is the digital foundation, understanding who we are, understanding others, and then being able to consciously make decisions as we navigate the digital space. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining